The NIC PC-98 was one hell of a machine. This absolute unit of a personal computer dominated Japanese computer market from its release in 1982 until its eventual discontinuation in 2003 due to the eventual inevitable globalization of Windows computers and likes, also it in Japan, but still managing to sell 18.3 million copies in all of its runtime. Originally, the PC-98 was marketed for business programs and office work, but that still didn't stop developers from forming a really thriving video game market around it, despite the hardware limitation it presented, like the limited color palette present on the system. Some really appreciated games for the time were made for it. And among all the long list of PC-98 games, the first 5 Touhou games are certainly among its certified and most recognized gems. This system was the stepping ground into the world of solo indie game developing for Junya Ota, or better known as Zun, the creator of the Touhou Project series that we all know and love, who wanted to find a place to share his music without resorting to working under a game company. The first 2 Touhou games, Highly Responsible to Prayers and Story of Eastern Wonderland, were released on the same day at Comiket 52 in 1997, with the last PC-98 game being Touhou 5 Mystic Square, released in 1998. And if you are one of the few Touhou fans who can actually read, you can probably tell from the title of the video which one we are going to talk about today. Touhou Mystic Square, the middle child of the Touhou series, stuck within the revolution of the Windows era and the experimentation of the PC-98 period, released only after 4 months after the release of Touhou 4 Lotus Land Story, which is definitely the most innovating Touhou game out of all the PC-98 ones. In fact, Touhou 5 feels more kind of a refinement of what Zun learned and experimented with in Touhou 4, and turning it into something more similar to Windows than most people think. Despite the old age and outdated systems of this game, it's still perfectly playable on modern computers even today, thanks to the huge community effort to not let the PC-98 become inaccessible to the average Touhou fan who wants to see what the very beginnings of Touhou look like. And luckily, PC-98 is not really considered that irrelevant anymore nowadays, and this game has sort of developed a kind of cult following among a certain part of the fandom, who is very dedicated to playing them, since they unironically love these games with all of their hearts for what they are, without being nostalgia blinded for them, since, well, I am willing to bet that less than 1k people around the world knew what Touhou was during the PC-98 days. So what better day to finally attempt at a first proper mainline Touhou game review on the 5th game of the series, right on the 5th day of the 5th month of the year, the 5th of May, the recognized Mystic Square day from the fan-made Touhou calendar, which is also the day that Napoleon died. Let's hope he at least got himself a bad celestial beach in heaven. And my birthday, but none of you guys would really care about that anyway. At least you can say in the comments that I'm getting closer and closer to Ankh status. Mystic Square is, together with Lotus Land Story, the fare of the PC-98 games, which is closer to what a proper Damaku game would feel like nowadays, since Touhou 1 is the best football game ever made, Touhou 2 is an absolute misery to play, and Touhou 3 is quite a nice Phantasmagoria game, but still a Phantasmagoria game at the end of the day, so it doesn't get the seal of quality approval from Touhou critics, since people treat anything Phantasmagoria like the plague, and the short time timestamp between the release of these pair of games makes me think that Zun was working on them at the same time, also due to many similarities between the two. Touhou 5 in particular stands out more for its beloved cast. For being the last game of the PC-98 era, Zun brought almost every single popular character of the time back, and added some new ones which would go on to become quite popular for themselves, or even appear as reworked in the Windows games. But enough introductory blubbery already. We need to actually start talking about the game itself, so I guess it's finally time to try to decipher this peculiar Mystic Square and see what the last chapter of the PC-98 Touhou era had brought to Touhou fans then, and what it still brings to Touhou fans today. Before starting with the actual story of the game, I remind you that PC-98 is an entirely different universe and plotline in writing for the Windows game story. Even if it's its own writing, the games themselves feel more like one-off episodes where just a few recurring characters appear. Because now that I think about it, not that much different from the Windows game writing after all, but the PC-98 ones are overall less serious and are more played for the shit and giggles than the Windows stuff. As for the actual plot of Mystic Square itself, suddenly, one random day, a bunch of spirits begin to sprout out of a cave en masse as Gensokyo begins to get flooded with them, as I guess they just go around and do the usual spirit things that spirits normally do, like harassing random people for no reason, and that's a pretty big no-no in Gensokyo. So either a young 16-year-oldish Reimu who loves playing football, or a snarky Marisa, or Mima, for all the actually genuine and non-posers Mima fans of the time who finally wanted her playable outside of a Phantasmagoria game, or Yuuka, yes, the borderline sociopathic one from Touhou, who is like 10 times worse than Seiga in terms of moral, if that word is even a vocabulary. Go investigate this, they all four get ready to embark on yet another goofy PC98 Touhou plot. The actual story scenarios and dialogues themselves are quite different from character to character here, so we will begin with Reimu's story to explain the overall plot, stages and encounters in this game, and then summarize the other three with my unfunny jokes along the way. The start of stage 1 is Reimu flying over the breathtaking hills of Gensokyo to reach the cave where the spirits are coming from. Wow! Just look at how beautiful these green hills are! Gensokyo is home to many gorgeous sights after all. When she finally enters down the cave, she finds this strange red ominous portal where she meets the most pink woman in all of Gensokyo. If I told you, Yuko, you are 2 games late. Sorry, pal. Sarah, the gatekeeper to the hellish realm where the spirits are coming from, Makai, which in PC98 is very different and way more unique from the Makai Windows, which is just turned into a generic hellish place. Reimu is obviously pissed at every single place in the Touhou universe as a gatekeeper. Like, imagine if you were Sumireko, trying to go to your local Burger King, and boom, there is a gatekeeper there. This is the type of shit that this girl has to deal with, along with her having a reputation in the gutter because of the Valor Detector 8 bandwagon. Reimu beats up Sarah in the most underwhelming and pathetic gatekeeping battle ever. In fact, I think Sarah is so weak at gatekeeping that she might as well be a Limbus Company elitist in her free time online. And Reimu enters these strange space dimensions, which represents the boundary between Gensokyo and Makai, dodging guys falling down towards her at high speeds and scary spirits wanting to kill her, alongside a flying mirror, since even furniture wants to kill shrine maidens in Touhou games. At the end of her trip, Reimu encounters this random woman named Louise, who is literally just a Makai resident trying to go on a vacation to Gensokyo, but since Reimu is the type of girl who hates visitors and then is the one to complain that she gets no donations at her shrine, she sees it as a good idea in her interest to attack someone who is literally bringing no harm and just trying to enjoy her booking vacation that she probably already paid for online. Reimu defeats Louise and finalizes in Makai, where she's now flying over the New York equivalent of the magical realm, complete with random people trying to kill you and all, even if the billboards advertising romantic and children makes me think that it's more akin to Epstein Island but on the scale of Detroit. But thankfully, instead of finding old Jeff's stack of cheese pizza at the place, Reimu finds this little girl, which I know it doesn't sound that reassuring after an Epstein joke, named Alice Margatroid. Yes, the same Alice Margatroid present in Windows that people who like white bread like to ship with Marisa. But this time, she's a kid who still has magical powers, but is understandably pissed that someone is going around slaughtering the people of the place where she lives. Well, sadly for her, Reimu doesn't really have that many problems fighting children, even during her teen years, and Alice gets swiftly defeated with no remorse. Reimu moves on to stage 4, where she's now flying above a sea of ice present in Makai. Don't ask why there is just a random frozen sea in the middle of Makai, nor the overall geography of Makai in general. This might as well just be the location for the secret marine benefit Christmas update that never released. Reimu just mindlessly flies around in random directions, and after a short mid-boss encounter with Louise again, but this time she's possessed and evil. Did Zunin that foul detective Satori's writing this long ago? She reaches this giant vortex in the middle of the frozen sea, but before being able to jump inside without asking any question of what it is or where it leads, 2 witches appear out of nowhere in front of her, Yuki and Mei. No, not the Mei from Touhou 16, but I might as well not specify it due to how much that game is either forgotten or talked about like the Antichrist. Yuki just tries to start beef with Reimu, Either because she felt like it or because she's also pissed that she's slaughtering her people, we don't really know, while Mei just silently watches. And then they both decide to attack Reimu, but as the fight normally goes on, at a certain point, this will happen. The game initially makes you think they're gonna have a standard double boss fight, but as soon as you kill either Yuki or Mei, the real actual stage 4 boss fight starts. If you kill Mei first, Yuki gets pissed that you killed their friend and is on the verge of bringing this game age rating up with a cut-off swear, before going absolutely Super Saiyan on your ass. If you kill Yuki first, Mei reveals herself as an asshole who can finally take care of you without Yuki being around, as she grows demon wings and a sick battle team for Aura. Reimu takes care of them both and breaks into Makai's main fortress, the Pandemonium. But as she goes along the weird corridors, she suddenly meets the god of Makai, whose name is Shinki, who does the whole "Haha Reimu, I have been waiting for you" speech, and reveals in the stupidest plot twist in the entire series that the true cause for the Makai spirits invading Gensokyo is due to her making a deal with a private travel agency organizing trips there, revealing that for this entire time, Reimu has been actually fighting against the tourism industry and the over-touristification of cities sitting in Tokyo. But before Reimu can tell Shinki that her and her tourism agency can fuck off, the dialogue gets interrupted by Yumeko, Shinki's most loyal and powerful maid, who asks her if she can take care of Reimu without Shinki having the trouble, and Shinki, being the lazy fuck whose whole goal in life is flexing on people, obviously agrees and dips. Yumeko then proceeds to throw motherfucking swords at Reimu to truly show that she means business, but since Reimu realizes that she's only at stage 5 and we got one more stage to go, she manages to defeat her and reaches the final confrontation with Shinki to finally shut down the unregulated tourist market from ruining Gensokyo and turning it into a giant amusement park. Shinki tries to flex on Reimu by saying that she's the goddess and creator of Makai, and that a mere shrine maiden like her will never be able to defeat her, and Reimu makes her promise her that if she wins, she will tell everyone in Makai to stop coming over to Gensokyo and put an end to this tourist madness that she's allowing and supporting. The fight actually starts, but even if Shinki brings the power of her cool 1 in a million Warframe ephemera mid-fight, Reimu finally defeats her and saves the day. But in the end, despite Shinki actually maintaining the promise, it's revealed that the people of Makai were so eager and intrigued with visiting Gensokyo, they managed to find a way to get into Gensokyo on their own without Shinki's power nor the need for any travel agency, so Reimu is just now left to deal with the Makaians now roaming in Gensokyo. Well, at least she might get probably more shrine visitors and donations now. All is well, all that ends well. Marisa's scenario is just her trying to assert dominance over the local Makai population. She just constantly trash talks on everyone for no reason. She then admits herself in her own ending that she had no idea why she even went to Makai in the first place. She manages to get rage baited by Alice and then tells the kid to get good at magic after she defeats her as she cries. Like, holy moly, this girl was a pure menace during her younger years. She hates children more than the average Redditor. Mima's scenario doesn't really have a set motive on why she travels to Makai apart from the fact that she's kinda bothered by all the space coming from there, and in dialogue she shares a bit of that trash-talking attitude that Marisa has, which makes sense since in the PC-98 story she's the one who trained Marisa into the use of magic after all, and presents herself to Shinki as the god of the human world, showing off her amazing LARPing skills, only for her to have both her endings, just with her end up going to the Hakurei shrine to mess with Reimu. The Psycho Yuuka returns from Touhou 4 in a now playable form, and as expected from PC-98 Yuuka, Elmore's entire reason for her being here and trying to Makai is just because she wanted to kill some people. No, I am not joking. Yuuka in this game manages to drop the single best line in the entire Touhou series, and she says, and I quote, "Genocide is just another game. It doesn't matter if it's humans or Makai residents." Like, holy shit! I find their bad ending to be really funny, since it's her just breaking the fourth wall and calmly reassuring the player that they probably had a bad day and to take a break before trying again with her for a 1cc, which is quite the comforting speech from someone whose entire reason from being here is literally because she wanted to commit genocide for her own enjoyment. And obviously, there is also an extra stage, where the protagonists travel in this strange Alice-themed wonderland and meet, you guessed it, Alice, who wants to get revenge and have a rematch, but this time, she has her own personal grimoire that allows her to lock in thanks to her 5th grade reading and spelling bee skills. The extra stage ending that is the most worth mentioning is Mima's ones, in which Mima decides to make Alice, a literal child by the way in this game, her personal maid, which shows that Mima might actually be a proud supporter of child employment, which wouldn't really be the first time she has done such a thing, since she has also done this in Touhou with Marisa. And this is basically all the plot on Mystic Square. As you can see, it's in line with the sillier tone that all the PC98 plots share. There is no Gensokyo changing incident or calamity, it's just a bunch of random people from another world wanting to visit Gensokyo, even if the tourism agency reveal it's only present in Reimu's scenario, but we might as well take that as the canon one, since it makes the more sense if we take this game as canon taking place before Windows, since it explains why Alice and Reimu met in the past, but Reimu can't remember who Alice was. In general, the PC98 canon discourse is kind of a controversial one. Not a lot of PC98 is brought back in Windows apart from 4 characters. In particular, the only things that are derived from Mystic Square are Alice coming back as a grown-up, even if there is literally zero mention of her time in Makai, and the only thing that she shares with her PC98 is her having the grimoire. The puppeteer aspect is completely a Windows thing, maybe derived from the fact that she uses 2 small fairies together during her fight in Mystic Square. Makaya's location is actually brought back in Touhou 12 as the place where Byakuren was sealed by the humans after suggesting that yokai should actually have rights, but there is no mention of Shinki nor any other Makai inhabitants. Makai just turned into generic Hell Dimension number 55, with nothing else added to it. It might as well just be a completely new Makai different from the one in Mystic Square, since there is nothing nor a mention from Alice to hint at it being a place similar to the one in Touhou 5. Personally, I prefer taking only some parts of PC98 as canon. While I see the kid version of Alice being an accurate representation of her as a child before Windows, I would like something more from Zune to actually make me think that the Windows Makai is the same as the PC98 one, so I can actually hope in an eventual return of someone as important as Shinki or my goat Mei, but let's be honest, if we were to take all of PC98 as canon, I don't know if to find more funny or unbelievable how Yuuka would go from total sociopath to the happy wholesome woman that she is in the Windows games in the span of only a few years. But who cares about that old ass boring lore that Touhou fans won't even read? We don't want this video to be yet another video game review that people complain online that is 80% story recap and 20% gameplay discussion. It's time to finally talk about the gameplay! Mystic Square gameplay is actually very similar to Touhou 4. You can tell these games were made 4 months apart, so if you play one you already kinda know what you're getting from the other, in part at least. These games are not some weird stuff like Touhou 1, and play just like a standard Touhou game with the usual powerpoints, items, lights, bombs and such, with Touhou 4 finally adding the best quality of life addition in the whole series, which is the ability to focus. In particular, Mystic Square differentiates itself from Lotus Land story due to its special mechanic, which is still derived from it but slightly reworked in a way, and that is the Dream Gauge. Above your shot power gauge, you have this Dream Gauge that gets slowly filled when you either graze a bullet when an enemy is present on the screen, or when you collect a power item or a point item above a certain threshold. I will now explain what I mean with threshold. All the Makuto games share this scoring thing that when an enemy drops an item point, as the point falls, you start decreasing in value the closer it is to the bottom of the screen. So points that are collected at the top of the screen are worth much more than the ones collected at the bottom. You can tell when you collect a point item at max value when the value text is displayed in yellow instead of white, and here it works so that every 100 points you collect you get an extra life to make your time easier. This is obviously quite the complicated stuff to keep up with. It's hard collecting points at higher values with consistency, since staying at the top of the screen will most likely get you killed, and there is also no line of collection here in this game to help you, not even at max power compared to the modern Touhou games where it's a lot more lenient there with the scoring. But fear not, because the Dream Gauge also deals with this issue. The more it's filled, the lower the point at which points will start to decrease in value will be, and when the Dream Gauge is at max, all bullets on the screen will be cleared in an instant and all points will be worth a much higher value regardless of where they're collected on the screen, as the value changes depending on the difficulty as long as the Dream Gauge remains at max. The Dream Gauge decreases when you either get hit or use a bomb, or even when you don't manage to collect a point item and it falls off the screen, but the last thing thankfully doesn't lower the gauge when it's at max. The best way to get the gauge to max is to collect these dream items that enemies drop from time to time. Upon collecting these, the dream gauge will instantly be filled, so your only challenge by then is to see how long can you go without either getting hit nor bombing for maximum score potential. This system is actually the first example of a Touhou special system impacting things outside of scoring. Touhou 4 was the first one to introduce the concept of special systems as a whole, with its own dream system, but it was only related to scoring as the amount of dream items you collected there gave you a point bonus at the end of the stage, while in Mystic Square, the Dream Gauge here also helps you beyond scoring with clearing all the bullets on the screen when at max, even if manipulating the Dream Gauge and getting to max without collecting a dream item directly is really tedious, and in those stage moments where you actually get a dream item, there won't be that many enemies nor bullets on the screen, so it doesn't really happen at the end of the day, but we still appreciate the sentiment behind it regardless. A mechanic like this can be compared to the first actual special mechanic introduced in Windows, the cherry meter in Touhou 7, but instead of giving you a shield against one hit for a short amount of time when it hits max and then resets, it just clears all of your bullets on the screen when the max is reached and stays that way until you die or bomb. This is one of the hardest games when it comes to scoring. If you want to aim for a good score, you have to basically play recklessly at the top of the screen until you finally get your Dream Gauge to max, and then try to do the entire run without neither dying or bombing. Truly an insane skill ceiling if you ever want to approach the high scoring world of this game. At least enemies drop maximum 1 point item at a time compared to Windows where they drop them en masse, but the way this game handles difficulty certainly doesn't help either. At first, I thought that this game didn't have an easy mode, and I had to beat the game on normal to unlock hard and lunatic, but then I went to check the menu and oh look, the difficulty selection is in there, like basically all the other PC98 games excluding Touhou 1, because football ain't easy for anyone. To be honest, I played this game both on easy and normal, and there isn't that much difference between the two difficulties apart from slight boss pattern changes, which have slightly more bullets, and stages didn't really feel that much different to me between the two. And while yes, I am in no way capable of attempting the hard and lunatic, I still asked around some people I know and that play at those levels, how the game plays at those difficulty to get an idea of how the game is there. The game is generally hard, not in a frustrating way like Touhou 12, but in quite a fun and challenging way, I'd say. Even if this game doesn't have a visible hitbox, compared to the Windows games, bullets in the PC98 games are way bigger in general, and you can actually see what hits you most of the time since the playing field is a lot smaller compared to something like USD, which is an absolute torture to play, regardless if you have the hitbox mod or not, because you can't cheat shit all the time. Also, compared to USD, this game doesn't have that much RNG bullshit that makes it horrible to play, Boss patterns don't use the spell card system of the Windows games, but still change when a boss is brought down to a certain health point, like if they are actually using a spell card, and the spells themselves are most of the time a series of attacks repeated in a set order, so there is an actual skill to learning them and not that much RNG involved in the patterns, to be honest. Each boss also has a last spell card that they use right before they are about to die. There are quite the unique patterns compared to the usual attacks, but you won't see them most of them for more than 10 seconds before actually defeating the boss, apart from Shinki's one, which is in line with the usual final spell card of a stage 6 boss in a Touhou game. The only boss with a special mechanic is Alice, both in a normal fight and in the extra stage one. In a normal fight, she uses the fairies to set up a magical barrier during an attack that she loves to spam that shoots out bullets back at you when your bullets pass through it, while in the extra stage fight, she's plain out immune to bomb damage when you use one, so you can't damage her at all via bombs. Well, I guess that you could also count the stage 4 Yuki and Mei fight as having a special mechanic with the whole choose who you wanna fight thing. The only really new thing added in the attacks themselves are these gummy worm bullets present in stage 4, Shinki's and Alice's extra stage fight. These bullets stop right after they are shoot out, before actually speeding up and curving to hit you. The community likes to call these Cheeto bullets, but I like to see them more as gummy worm ones, since they remind me more of it with their appearance and actual behavior, and I don't think blue Cheetos are a thing since Mei uses them in stage 4. Sarah is quite the outliner of this game in terms of difficulty. Her fight is stupidly easy, which, well, can I really complain about since it's a stage 1 boss at the end of the day? She likes to spin around like Hina and shoots out bullets in random directions, whee! Even if during a last spell she actually remembers that she can also shoot out lasers for once. Louise is also on the easier side in terms of stage 2 bosses. Sometimes she likes to shoot straight, sometimes she likes to shoot curved. All around, she shoots pretty bisexual, but she also likes to shoot in circles around her and make you move left and right during her final spell. Alice is a big difficulty spike of the game. During all of her attacks, she helps herself via the use of 2 fairy familiars that shoot alongside her that can thankfully be destroyed while she dashes left and right. She absolutely adores spamming this fuck-ass wall of bullets attack that is just so annoying to deal with for how many times she uses it throughout the whole fight, but apart from that, it's quite the enjoyable fight to a certain extent, with her last spell being a more static and maze-like one, which sadly doesn't last long. The stage 4 fight technically can be considered as 3 different fights. The first one where you fight both Yuki and Mei at the same time, and the proper solo fights that start after you kill one of them. The duo fight is kinda tricky, as expected they both attacked at the same time, but with 2 different patterns. The only one I completely dislike and overly struggle with is the attack where Mei uses this ray of lasers that lock onto you and follow you for a few seconds, but only the ray itself is the issue. It's really precise with your padding and fast to catch up with your movement, while Yuki just shoots small bullets in front of her which don't really get in the way of things. The actual solo fights are the fun part though. They take 2 completely different approaches to the Mako design. Yuki's fight is full of fast-paced and highly random waves of bullets coming towards you, almost to give the impression that she's so blinded by rage that she's not even aiming properly, while Mei's spellcards are a lot more calculated. They try to get you with a more precise than Mako approach. Bullet waves don't feel that random, and she does a smart use of lasers to try and close you off or straight up hit you. This little bastard is trying to kill you in a more calculated way now that she can go full mask off and reveal her true demon form. Yumeko is a certified bitch. Her fight is definitely the hardest and least fun in the entire game. She eats up a shit ton of lives with her attacks that either keep you always on the move or like to close you off carefully to get you. I wouldn't call it plain out unfair like Sakuya fight in USD since the most comparable one to it, but she's definitely the least fun I got out of this game for how frustrating she can get at times. Shinki is a really good and memorable stage 6 fight. The visual effect over awakening and wigs during the fight is honestly sick. Her attacks are really creative and memorable when I think about them, and she actually has a last spell that lasts more than 10 seconds this time around compared to the other bosses. The full fight is a lot of fun without feeling straight up unfair for all the attacks. The only issue I have with it is that it's one hell of a short stage 6 boss. This game boss fights are generally quite short when compared to the Windows games, and this is notable not only here, but also in stage 1 and stage 2 fights specifically, but at least the issue is not as bad as Orange fight in Touhou 4, which I think might be the fastest boss to clear in the entire Touhou series. Alice in the extra stage can be quite a tough fight as expected from an extra stage after all. The bomb immunity is a bit of a bummer, but the thing that bothers me the most is how some of her earlier attacks feel way too RNG involved compared to a lot of other patterns in the game. But hey, even if the entirety of the extra stage is a bit short, it's not exactly unfun to clear. But how about we move on from the bosses and finally talk about our good old playables and their shot types. We'll start off with Reimu, and be ready to say with me kids, Reimu is the standard, homing projectiles and all. Well, apart from the fact that in this game she flies on her Turtle Genji like all the other Damaku PC98 games, she's not that far off from her Windows version of her with no damage included in the package, apart from her missing her needles for actual proper damage output, since focusing in this game brings no changes between focused and non-focused shooting. You only have one way of shooting per character, and that's it. I can't even recommend Reimu for the hitbox, since every character in this game has the same hitbox size, just placed on a different point on their character. Marisa is at least a bit more usable and creative. She shoots out stars in front of her with not really that bad spread, a thing that she only remembers to do when she forces an adversary, and she also uses her magic missiles to achieve one of the highest DPSs among all 4 characters, if not the best DPS in the entire game. Mima is by far the best shot in the entire game. She has slightly less DPS than Marisa, but an insane speed that makes her being able to dodge bullets like they weren't even there. She's so broken that I managed to once see the game on normal on my first try using her. She's miles above everyone else in this game, and absolute dunks on everything this game throws at you. And at last we have Yuuka, and holy mommy, that's a tall woman, please genocide me instead. But sadly, our dear Yuuka is almost as unusable as Reimu. She has even less DPS than Reimu, and for being a shot that is focused on spread, she's absolutely horrible at clearing stage enemies for how little damage she does. Think of her as the Sana in 10 Desires equivalent to this game, but she gets forgiven because she's Mommy Yuuka after all, and I'm still gonna love playing as her, while the bitches motherfucker Osane can go back to making outdated pop culture references like the Nintendo fan that she is. The last gameplay feature of Mystic Square is that this game uses the rank system. If you don't know what it is, it's a system present in almost all old Touhou games. It works so that the longer you go without being hit or using a bomb, the harder the game will be, as bullets will be faster and in higher numbers in some boss patterns. I don't really like this system, but thankfully I didn't find it too impactful here compared to something like, you guessed it, USD, where it's taken to absolutely awful levels there. I managed to get to May's fight using Mima on normal without getting it once, so it's not that unbearable to have here, even if this is generally the mechanic that makes this game high scoring so hard to do, since you have to basically play the game at max rank on top of being able to grab as many point items as you want. Overall, Mystic Square gameplay certainly doesn't show its age. If someone called this game clunky, it will be incorrect. A clunky game is something that is poorly designed, overcomplicated, or outdated, but the only thing this game really needs is a visible hitbox, and it already feels like a Windows game. Hell, this game is like 1000 times way more enjoyable than playable than its oh so beloved Windows successor, so I don't really see why someone would make an excuse for not playing this because it's too different from Windows and not true Touhou, as the LARP Saurs would never finish the YouTube walkthrough of USD would say. For the era, it's a surprisingly approachable game. While not anything revolutionary in terms of innovations and systems, it feels fairly balanced, and not some straight up rage-inducing bullshit like its more popular successor. Since this is a mainline game review, I wanted to dedicate a small section to the cast and my personal thoughts on each of them and what I like or dislike about them. I wanted to put this section right after the story one, but I felt like it would have been unpleasant to have the gameplay part of the video come so late into it, so I'll put it here. We'll start with the first Macaean that you meet, Sarah, and for Sarah I guess that she's just there. Like, she doesn't have an interesting design or even a unique personality, even compared to the other gatekeepers of the series. Orange has her bold, silly attitude and her goofy name to stand up for herself, even with her solitary game appearance, and Mei is an iconic character all around, and someone who got a lot of characterization beyond her gatekeeping aspects throughout the series, while Sarah just has nothing, and the fact that she's a stage 1 boss doesn't really help her either in terms of top writing. I just don't think anyone thinks specifically of her when they are thinking about Mystic Square. Louise is thankfully one I like better, but I think that she's one of the characters in the entire series who suffers the most from the "it's just some random girl" curse the most. Her whole reason for being here is literally just a coincidence, and she just ends up being someone caught in the crossfire of Reimu's slaughter of innocent Macaeans trying to go on vacations. But hey, she looks stylish in her design at least, ooh la la. But as a character, I don't see exactly how she could return in Windows, apart from maybe a comic cameo or something, which would still be appreciated by not only me, but by all the other true Louise fans in the world. But oh well, who am I to speak if I want Kotoime out of all PC98 characters to come back the most? Okay, so, for Alice, I'll admit that for my first entire year of being in Touhou, when I was taking my baby steps to graduate from LARP status, I was like the #1 Alice Margatroid fan on the entire planet before converting to the Yamame fate. The issue is, I was a fan of her Windows version. I never really cared for Kid Alice and don't care a lot about her now, but I guess I don't really mind the fan-on-family dynamic that people see with her being Shinki's daughter. That only really means to me that the Zig of the past would add Shinki as his mother-in-law, but that is something that I only really value in Alice's grown-up version. At least one thing I'll say on Kid Alice, that she doesn't come off as annoying for being a kid character. I highly dislike child characters in media for being obnoxious most of the time, but at least here she comes off as more heroic with her trying to stop the protagonist from killing more Macaeans. For Yuki and Mei, I would like to see them more as two separate characters than a duo. I prefer to see characters that way, and the one who gets the shorter end of the stick is definitely Yuki. While I think that the idea of her using black magic is cool, I don't find her design really that interesting, and I don't think she's that interesting also as a solo character without her dynamic with Mei. The issue is not as bad as the one with Isami, who unironically cannot exist as her own character without Zammu, but even then, their whole dynamic is being the cheerful one of the duo and nothing more, apart from showing that she cares for Mei when she gets defeated. Speaking of Mei, oh, Mei is by far my favorite character in the whole game. My love for pieces of shit characters strikes once more, and her faking being all quiet and then revealing her true colors and how she actually hates Yuki is the character writing cherry on top. Thematically, she's supposed to be a traitor to Yuki's goodwill towards her, explaining her the name of her team and why her angel wings turn into demon ones. A lot of people like to play the "she actually cares for Yuki deep down" card, but I think it's pretty obvious and clear that she's supposed to be an unapologetic asshole of a character. Just an amazing character all around, both in personality and even in design. If only she returned in Windows though, but at least I have Sega there to satisfy my love for unapologetic pieces of shit characters in the modern series. Well, for Yumeko we obviously have to draw the Sakuya parallels. Now you may know that I throw a lot of shit publicly towards Sakuya and her fans, but let's separate the fans from the character here for a moment. Yumeko is clearly a beta version of Sakuya. She's not the only instance of a PC-98 character being extremely similar to an ESD one, for better or for worse. They are very similar not only in design but also in personality for what little Yumeko has. The only big difference is that one throws words and the other throws knives. Am I still going to make this video even more controversial than it is by saying that I like Yumeko more? Yes, I will, because the sword is cooler than the knife and I like blondes. Shinki is definitely the most popular character from Mystic Square in the general fandom. I like her design. I think she's a fun character for switching between being very laid back and chill in stage 5 to show off attitude in stage 6 when you actually fight her. Not to mention that her wings that she pops out of nowhere in the middle of the fight look sick and are definitely the most unique and best thing about her design, and truly makes her stand out as a stage 6 boss and an absolute god of an air realm. At least Shinki fans can call her mommy due to the fanon aspect of her being considered Ellie's mother with Yumeko to assist her in taking good care of her. Very wholesome all around, even if there is another fanon version of Shinki that is even more... You really think I was going to make a Mystic Square mega video and not mention this? Okay, so, as you may or may not have noticed, I'm not quite the guy to mention fanworks, but if you have interacted with any kind of Touhou creepypasta or Touhou horror media in general, you have probably seen this image. This creepily edited image of Shinki comes from the most infamous piece of Touhou fanwork ever derived from Mystic Square existence, and that is the absolute infamous Touhou creepypasta known as Touhou Dark Square. This is a creepypasta that became so infamous due to it ticking all the cringy and cliché boxes of the average internet creepypasta. The guy receives a line and anti-ROM of the game, the characters glitch around and stuff, and Shinki is now evil and twisted and makes the game crash, yada yada yada. Nothing too new from an usual internet creepypasta, but I honestly hope that the guy who created this absolute tragedy of an art piece made it ironically, because this shit is just so cringy, so corny, so cliché, that the best way I can sum it up is that if it was Mystic Square, but with the writing level of Omori, trying too hard to be dark and all, I would read it to ya if the video wasn't already long enough, so I'll just put the link to the Touhou Pasta wiki for it in the description. Huge cringe warning if you are ever going to read it. There are also quite the unnamed mid-bosses in this game, which should get a special mention at least to finally give them some relevance from time to time. These are, what you say in stage 1 who likes to shoot out balls of electricity around there, the Spirit Mirror in stage 2 which looks actually really cool, Ikariko in stage 3 which reminds me of a small flower fairy, Ayana in stage 5 which looks like shiny Ikariko, and the Trump King in the extra stage who is there to finally make you understand that the stage is supposed to be an Alice in Wonderland reference. Well, I am not gonna act like these fellas are the key to resolving Mystic Square Eden story, but at least let's not make them any more irrelevant than they already are. If something as bland as Kwakuma can become a character and have fans, then a cool mirror with wings can too. We can finally talk a bit about the overall art direction, and I wanted to really define it thematically coherent. I mean, Makaya's Avol is a geographical mess, and the character designs don't really go that crazy apart from maybe Shinki. The funniest thing about this game is that the most unique looking characters are Mima and Yuuka, and both of them are reused designs, but at least Zune went to the mile to give them proper character icons compared to Reimu and Marisa, who reused the same ones from Touhou 4, with Marisa literally only having her dress changed from purple to black. If people can get schizophrenia from Marisa having red eyes on one cover art, then people can absolutely go nuts from her changing her dress color. At least Mystic Square looks really clean for being a PC98 games, leagues ahead of Touhou 4 and a lot more colorful despite the technical side of the PC98 having a limited color palette. ZUN did an amazing sprite work in this game, especially for the bosses. Just like look at how smooth Sarah looks in her idol and shooting animations. Even the spell card backgrounds are really cool. I don't get why ZUN decided to give Louise a Stars theme background, but hey, it looks awesome! Even the stages themselves look good for the system. Stage 2 in particular goes really hard with the ice raining down on you and all the stars passing by to truly give the impression that you are going fast as the speed of light, but Alice should at least ask for more allowance from Shinki to upgrade the budget for her Wonderland. It saw red carpets floating in the void, and she spent all the budget on getting a trump card as a mid-boss and to dress all the fairies in unique outfits. To be honest, this game looks miles better than early Windows, not only of the pitch black USD, but also PCB and IN. The first Touhou Windows games to finally get rid of the darkened out filter and finally put some vibrant colors on how the game looked was Touhou 9, because Yuuka is in there, and how can you make a dark looking game if there is Yuuka there to always bring a smile of either worry or happiness? At last, we have the music, and ZUN as always didn't pull any punches on this one. Many people forget that ZUN is a music composer first, and a game maker second, and it showed even during his earlier projects. There is a total of 23 tracks used in the whole games, and the real highlights in terms of stages and bosses, I say are Romantic Children and Judas Kiss. Romantic Children is the stage 3 music, and it's one of the best and understandably most famous PC98 tracks out there, which apart from the overly questionable title that will get you put on a watch list if you mention it to someone who doesn't know Touhou, it's a surprisingly melancholic track for how it goes for a more nostalgia-inducing tone, maybe to reflect the concept of childhood present in Alice there. My love for Judas Kiss may be derived from my huge bias towards May and her character, but what can I do? It's an evil sounding theme, and I mentioned in other videos how you absolutely adore evil sounding themes, and it perfectly fits the fight, both in the name, which goes hard. It's a track with a lot of it, and I love how ZUN basically made different themes for all 3 versions of the fight in stage 4, with Yuki also having her own theme, which well encapsulates the sheer rage that she is feeling in the fight. At least I'll give an extra point to Yumeko and say that their theme is a bit of a vibe, but only a certain part of the song. The rest is pretty okay-ish, so I just end up waiting for that part when I listen to it. There is also Alice's extra stage fight theme, creatively named the Grimoire of Alice, which reminds me a lot of Alice's Soku theme every time I hear it, since surprise surprise, it's directly based on it. The Soku one is just a jazz remix of the original PC98 track. ZUN decided to make one of the greatest gifts ever to PC98 music Touhou fans, by creating the best music room in the entire series. This game music room includes every single PC98 track from all 5 games for you to listen to, even unused ones. And not only that, but it also shows you the notes that are played for each track via the piano on the right. And it's so cool, by far one of the coolest things ZUN has ever coded. And I thank him for making me able to listen to Strawberry Crisis after losing yet another 1cc using Reimu. Why buy Accused Untouched Records when you can just get this game and have all the PC98 soundtracks for yourself? There is a last final menu secret to mention. If you unlock the extra stage with all 4 characters, then hold both left and right in the menu while waiting for the usual demo replay, the game will show you an exclusive replay of ZUN clearing the extra stage using Mima. Lovable developer touch to add in a Touhou menu really. Overall, Touhou Mystic Square is a fantastic game. I wouldn't refine it as revolutionary as Touhou 4 for what it changed and meant for Touhou as a game series, but it's definitely the one of the 2 that feels the more refined, and in some ways a straight up upgrade. This doesn't feel like a PC98 game at all. It's not held back by any clunky or weird experimental things like the first chapters of PC98. It's a game that is capable to rival even modern Windows, if not be able to even surpass some of its successors in a lot of aspects that it absolutely excels at. It's a game that should not be looked at with nostalgia lens to be able to praise it. We are not Nintendo fans, and the rule old game good, new game bad is unfair to use. Maybe Zune one day will decide to re-mention this game again, and we might see someone like Shinki or Yumeko get back in Windows under an interesting new coat of paint. But it's not really a necessity. This game is perfectly playable even by modern standards, and there is not a single reason in the world why you would skip this because it isn't a Windows. Let's be honest, it's the year 2026 and PC98 is not considered irrelevant anymore. It's even more accessible than ever, and it isn't fair to treat it as something below Windows, especially for a game such as Mystic Square, which has its own charms that someone can fairly recognize even with a modern view. This whole game, the gameplay, the art style, feels like the work of someone who has finally mastered the game engine and system he's working with thanks to his experience. Everything that Zune learned in his whole PC98 years of game deving is truly shown off here. It's all so smooth and refined like never before. A shame that the reason that ESD came out as bad as it is, it's probably because he had to switch to a new engine and system and he didn't know what he was doing with it. But hey, it's fine, the series got way better over time despite the hit or misses that it took, and all machines or consoles are bound to die eventually. Why the hell would it be in Zune's interest to continue making games for the PC98 anyway, if by the time his break period post-graduation ended, Windows was the big thing of the market? But does Mystic Square really feel like a sort of final goodbye by Zune to the PC98 world and characters? No, in my opinion, not really. I just don't think that Zune already planned the Windows rebooting idea that far ahead. While it's completely possible that he had no further plans to continue supporting the PC98 due to its graduation happening at the time and the game coming out pretty late in the PC98 lifetime, the only hint at this being a kind of epilogue game is only given by the fact that the music room contains all 5 of the PC98 game's soundtracks, so I just think that he kinda wanted to write something a bit more thematically coherent and serious for the future of the series when he started working on it after a 2-year break instead of continuing with the comedy slapstick approach that he went for the first 5 games of his career. I know that at the end of the day, my excessive yapping about a singular Touhou game from 28 years ago doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. You can and should play Mystic Square and form your opinion on it that I would love to discuss down in the comments. But I love Touhou as a whole and talking about video games in general, so that's exactly what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna keep reviewing them, hopefully in the future. And these are all my reasons why I think that Touhou 5 truly feels like the apotheosis of an era. Thanks for watching.